Seattle was wrapped in its usual blanket of cold April mist. But on that morning, the air carried something heavier than the weather itself. It was the kind of silence that precedes a moment the world is never prepared for. As the city stirred awake, a single piece of news began traveling quietly from house to house, from studio to newsroom, from friend to stranger, each retelling amplifying the disbelief that followed. Kurt Cobain, the reluctant icon whose voice had shaken the foundations of modern music, had been found at his home. With that single announcement, the rhythm of an entire generation seemed to falter. For years, his music had captured emotions that young people could not name. Now, that voice was suddenly still. Fans across Seattle froze in shock, unable to reconcile the ordinary weather with the extraordinary loss. Across the country, journalists struggled to find words that could honor the magnitude of what had happened. And across the world, millions felt the same hollow pause, as if youth itself had lost one of its fiercest storytellers. Kurt Cobain had always been more than a musician. He was a reflection of the turbulence and tenderness that defined his era. His songs carried feelings that countless listeners had buried, and his presence, raw, sincere, and vulnerable, became the symbol of a generation searching for meaning in its own chaos. When the news emerged that April morning, the question was the same everywhere. How did the boy who once felt invisible become the voice of millions? And what led his extraordinary journey to such a quiet end? Before the stages, the amplifiers, and the worldwide acclaim, Kurt Cobain was simply a sensitive child growing up in Aberdeen, a small Washington town where the skies were often gray, and the streets carried the quiet rhythm of working-class life. He was born on February 20th, 1967, into a family that loved him but struggled with its own fractures. When he was 9, his parents separated, and the world he knew splintered with them. Those who watched him grow remembered how quickly the bright-eyed boy became more withdrawn, carrying a sadness that seemed too heavy for a child his age. Yet even as he retreated inward, his imagination expanded. He sketched endlessly, filling pages with characters and worlds no one else could see. Creativity became the safest place he knew. At 14, he received a weathered guitar, nothing fancy, nothing new, and instantly treated it as though it had always belonged to him. Music gave him a language for everything he felt but could never quite explain. In a town that often felt too small, he found a universe in 6 strings. He played for hours, shaping chords that echoed his isolation, turning emotion into melody long before he found the words to match. Aberdeen may have seemed unremarkable to others, but for Kurt, its loneliness, its quiet corners, and its unspoken tensions shaped the artist he would become. The contradictions around him, beauty and bleakness, noise and silence, became the foundation of his creativity, leading him down a path he could not have imagined then. As Kurt entered his late teens, the desire to escape the confinement of his hometown grew stronger. He drifted toward the underground music scene of the Pacific Northwest, a world built from dim basements, cheap equipment, and an unpolished honesty that resonated deeply with him. In this chaotic yet strangely comforting environment, he met Chris Novoselic. Their personalities contrasted sharply. Kurt intense and inward, Chris calm and observant, but their musical chemistry was undeniable. When they played together, the room seemed to shift, as though their combined energy filled the space with something new. They rehearsed anywhere they could, from cramped living rooms to borrowed garages, their sound raw but compelling. Eventually, they settled on a name: Nirvana. Kurt chose it for its sense of peace, perhaps as a quiet hope for something he rarely felt. Early performances were small and messy, but each show sharpened them. In 1989, they released their debut album, Bleach, a gritty collection of songs fueled by limited resources and pure conviction. Though it did not explode commercially, it revealed a band with a distinct voice emerging from the underground. Yet Kurt felt there was something incomplete, a missing piece that would allow their music to fully ignite. That piece arrived in the form of drummer Dave Grohl, whose explosive power and precision elevated Nirvana's sound. With the trio finally complete, their direction became clear. They were no longer simply part of the underground, they were ready to transform it. When Nirvana stepped into the studio to create Nevermind, they did not intend to change the world. They simply wanted to make an album truer to the force they felt on stage. But the moment the record was released in September 1991, the atmosphere around them shifted. The first shockwave came from Smells Like Teen Spirit, a track that blended thunderous drums, hypnotic guitar lines, and Kurt's unmistakable voice, half plea, half eruption. The song arrived at a moment when young people were searching for something raw and unfiltered, and suddenly, here it was. The music video, chaotic and electrifying, swept across television screens, capturing the restless spirit of a generation. Almost overnight, Nirvana went from underground hopefuls to global sensations. Stores struggled to keep the album in stock. Radio stations played it endlessly. Teenagers found in Kurt's lyrics a mirror for their own anxieties and confusion. And in an industry-shaking moment, Nevermind dethroned Michael Jackson's album from the top of the Billboard charts. But as the world celebrated them, Kurt felt conflicted. He had never imagined becoming a mainstream figure, let alone a cultural symbol. Fame magnified everything: praise, scrutiny, expectation, until it became a weight he wasn't prepared to carry. Though he appreciated the connection fans felt toward the music, he feared being turned into something he was not. And the pressure of that contradiction deepened the emotional storm within him. As Nirvana's fame surged, the world viewed Kurt as a spokesperson for a generation, a label that never sat comfortably with him. His rise was meteoric, but the spotlight that came with it felt intrusive and overwhelming. What the public saw as success, Kurt often experienced as confinement. He loved writing music, yet he struggled with the constant expectation to perform, explain, and validate every lyric he crafted. His marriage to Courtney Love in 1992 intensified media attention, turning personal moments into subjects of constant speculation. When their daughter, Frances Bean Cobain, was born, Kurt found genuine joy, a brief stillness amid the chaos. Those who knew him said he transformed when he held his daughter, his voice softening, his worries quieting. But even as fatherhood brought him grounding, the demands of fame continued to grow. Kurt battled chronic stomach pain and recurring health complications that left him physically drained. Emotionally, the pressure from fans, journalists, and the industry intensified, creating a widening gap between who he was and who the world believed him to be. His sensitivity, one of the qualities that made his music so powerful, also amplified his internal struggles. In public, he was a symbol. In private, he was a man looking for balance in a life that rarely offered it. By early 1994, Kurt had begun to pull back from the noise that surrounded his life. Touring demands, media pressures, and his ongoing health struggles had taken a noticeable toll. Those close to him observed a man carrying a deep exhaustion, one that came not from a lack of talent or desire, but from the weight of emotional fatigue. His days were quieter, marked by moments of reflection, scattered writing sessions, and an effort to find space away from overwhelming attention. Music remained his refuge, and even in periods of solitude, he continued to sketch ideas, jot down lyrics, and explore melodies. Yet despite moments of hopefulness, the pressures did not disappear. Interviews, expectations, and the constant presence of fame left little room for recovery. Kurt sought stability, reaching for ways to regain control of his life, but the distance between his inner world and his public role kept widening. As winter turned to spring, he became increasingly withdrawn, preserving what little peace he could find in the privacy of his home. Friends later recalled that he seemed both introspective and vulnerable, navigating an emotional storm that grew quieter but no less intense. In the first days of April, Seattle's sky took on a soft gray stillness, and inside Kurt's home, that quiet felt even deeper. He had spent weeks retreating from public life, seeking separation from the expectations that had long overshadowed him. The final days were calm and private, marked by solitude rather than spectacle. He spent time alone with his thoughts, writing in his journals, reflecting on his journey, and stepping further away from the noise that fame had wrapped around him. On April 5th, 1994, Kurt Cobain was found at his home. Authorities later confirmed the cause of his passing, and although the details remained minimal, the conclusion marked the end of one of the most influential voices in modern music. When news of his death spread, the world reacted with a wave of disbelief. Fans gathered across Seattle, lighting candles beneath the gray sky. Radio stations played Nirvana songs back to back. Newspapers attempted to express the scale of the loss, though no headline could fully capture it. What resonated most was not the way he died, but the way he had lived with honesty, vulnerability, and an unwavering dedication to expressing truth through music. His passing left a silence that felt unreal, a sudden pause in a story that had shaped a generation. Yet even in that silence, his voice continued to echo in stadiums, through speakers, in bedrooms, where fans once found comfort in his lyrics. Kurt Cobain's final moments did not define him. What defined him was the impact he left behind, a reminder that art is most powerful when it is honest, and that even the quietest soul can speak loud enough to change the world. In the years that followed his passing, the world began to understand more clearly what Kurt Cobain had left behind. His voice did not fade when the headlines disappeared. Instead, it continued to rise from radios, from dim bedrooms filled with old posters, from live stages where new artists found their courage through the honesty he had championed. He had become a symbol not because he sought the title, but because he expressed emotions others were afraid to name. Generations who never lived through the 90s still discovered him, drawn to the raw sincerity of his music, the unfiltered reflections in his lyrics, and the vulnerability he shared without apology. His induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame only confirmed what fans had long felt, that his impact transcended time, transcended genre, and transcended the boundaries of any single era. Even fashion, film, and art circles echoed his influence. The flannel shirts, the undone hair, the refusal to pretend. It all became part of a cultural imprint that outlived the man who unintentionally created it. But beyond the global recognition, perhaps the most enduring part of Kurt's legacy is the sense of connection he offered. His songs reminded people they were not alone in their confusion, their loneliness, or their longing for meaning. And though his journey ended too soon, the honesty he left behind continues to guide those searching for a voice that understands their own. Kurt Cobain may have stepped out of the spotlight on that quiet April day, but the light he left behind has never dimmed. It lives in every chord that shakes with truth, every lyric born from vulnerability, and every young artist who dares to speak openly about the storms inside them. His story is a reminder that influence is not measured by time, but by impact, by the way. A single voice can transform millions of lives. Thank you for watching this journey through the life of a musician who never tried to be a legend, yet became one. If you want to explore more stories like this, remember to subscribe, follow our playlist dedicated to iconic artists, and stay tuned for the next chapter in the world of music history.